Every empire begins with a promise. This one promised America a future, youth, grace, and certainty. The world believed, but dreams collect debts. One by one, the brightest names of this dynasty met the same quiet shadow. Some call it fate, others call it a curse. Perhaps it was neither. Perhaps it was momentum. Ambition written too deep into a bloodline to ever slow down. What follows isn't classified. It was always visible. We simply learned not to look. Disclaimer: this program does not promote, justify, or condemn any policy or security-related activities, nor any political viewpoint. All material is based entirely on publicly available sources, official records, reputable biographies, verified media, and open-source archives. Our purpose is educational and analytical, to examine how legacy and influence operate within families that shaped culture and power. Viewers are encouraged to verify every claim independently and draw their own conclusions. Interpretation remains yours. To comply with platform guidelines and ethical standards, this episode uses neutral terminology when referring to sensitive subjects. This work reflects our analysis and perspective. You may disagree, and you have every right to. Please consult multiple sources and never take any single source, including this one, at face value. In the early 20th century, a new American story began to assemble itself, not by accident, but by design. Joseph Patrick Kennedy Sr. believed legacy could be engineered through capital, discipline, image, and marriage. The Kennedys were not born into royalty. They reverse-engineered it. The family's rise was meticulous. Education became ritual. Appearances became strategy. Private life was curated for public impact. America, searching for a modern myth, found one. A household that looked like the nation's promise, youthful, capable, immaculate. The press learned the faces. The country learned the smiles. The idea of American royalty without a crown took shape. But all architectures carry hairline cracks no one wants to see. A dynasty built at speed demands maintenance, constant, quiet, relentless. What the world called charm, the family called work. What the world called destiny, the architect called a plan. Before this name became a headline, it was a blueprint. And like every blueprint, it hid the cost in the margins. Joseph Patrick Kennedy Sr. was more than a father. He was an architect, not of buildings, but of people. To him, family was not an accident of birth. It was an enterprise. Every child had a function. Every success was an investment. Every mistake, a liability. He didn't simply raise children. He managed them. Discipline was a virtue, but control was the method. He mapped his lineage like a corporate structure. Clear goals, clear succession, zero tolerance for weakness. "One of my sons will be president," he once declared. It was not a dream, it was a deadline. In that pursuit, affection became conditional, and achievement a form of obedience. The Kennedy household was less a home than a prototype, a laboratory for ambition. From the outside, it looked like unity. From within, it felt like gravity, constant, invisible, and impossible to escape. The blueprint was working. But like all designs meant to last forever, it ignored one crucial variable: the human cost of perfection. The Kennedys understood something long before the age of influencers, that perception was power. Long before the word brand existed, they built one. Public appearances became currency. Every photograph was a calculated broadcast, laughter framed, posture rehearsed, imperfection edited. They embodied a version of America that wanted to believe in its own reflection, young, ambitious, invincible. The family turned their private life into a national story. The wedding became a fairy tale, the campaign a movie, the presidency a televised myth. But no mirror shows the cracks behind it. The same charm that captivated millions also created an impossible standard to live up to. Every gesture had to align with the legend. Every silence had to sound like confidence. Their public grace concealed private gravity. And image, once constructed, began to own them. Because when a dynasty becomes its own advertisement, truth turns into a threat. For the Kennedys, perfection wasn't vanity, it was survival. And survival, like ambition, always demands another performance. The blueprint demanded heirs, and it received martyrs. Joseph Jr., the eldest son, the golden one, volunteered for a mission in 1944. The aircraft never made it back. His body was never recovered. 4 years later, his sister Kathleen boarded another plane. It broke apart above the French countryside. 2 children gone before the dynasty even reached its throne. And then the throne arrived. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, young, handsome, immaculate, the embodiment of his father's prophecy. For a brief moment, the world believed the plan had worked. Until Dallas, a motorcade, an open sky, and daylight that turned to horror on live television. The nation watched its dream shatter in real time. 5 years later, Robert followed the same path. A crowd, a flash, and another silence. The pattern was undeniable now. A father had built a dynasty of promise, and it was being dismantled, one son at a time. The newspapers called it the Kennedy curse, but it wasn't supernatural. It was the human cost of a dream pursued beyond the limits of flesh. The family was still breathing, but the myth had already drawn too much blood. By the time the 70s arrived, grief had become a family language. The next generation grew up surrounded by photographs of faces that would never grow old. David Kennedy drowned in the undertow of addiction, a boy born into cameras and never taught how to survive their light. Another cousin was paralyzed in a car crash. Another died before 30. And then came John Jr., the prince America refused to stop watching. He flew his own plane into the Atlantic in 1999. The wreckage surfaced days later. It was as if the ocean had been waiting to finish the story his grandfather began. Generation after generation, the same pattern: ambition, ascent, disappearance. The Kennedys were no longer a family. They were a recurring headline, a reminder that legacy and loss are twins. Reporters still called it a curse, but anyone who looked closely could see the design. A dream engineered so perfectly that no one inside it could breathe. Every public myth hides a private silence. Behind the speeches, the handshakes, the photographs, there were walls that never heard laughter. The Kennedy home, once a symbol of unity, was also a theater of control. Perfection was a rule, not a reward. Mistakes were handled quietly. Pain, even quieter. The family image allowed no fractures, and when cracks appeared, they were covered with charm. Ambition kept them moving. Pride kept them performing. But the human body can only carry so much mythology before it begins to fracture from the inside. Some sought escape in distraction, others in distance. The cameras saw composure. The rooms behind the cameras saw exhaustion. Because the most fragile part of power isn't its fall, It's the need to pretend it never shakes. The Kennedys mastered the art of holding the pose, even when the frame was collapsing. And in that performance, tragedy found its final rehearsal. Inheritances come in many forms. Some pass down fortune, others pass down fear. For the Kennedys, inheritance meant expectation, not what you receive, but what you must live up to. Every generation was born into a story already written. To succeed was duty. To fail was betrayal. The family's image was no longer a mirror. It was a commandment. Even those who tried to escape the name carried its weight in silence. Because how do you live as yourself when your very existence was engineered for legacy? The Kennedy lineage became a performance that never ended. A stage inherited by birthright, with no script but perfection. And somewhere inside that dynasty of promise, the individual disappeared. The myth survived. The people beneath it didn't always. That's the true cost of inheritance. The surrender of self in exchange for history. History doesn't repeat itself. Families do. Fate is not written in stars. It's written in habits, passed down like heirlooms, unnoticed until it's too late to change them. The Kennedys became a mirror for every dynasty that ever believed it could outgrow consequence. They built a legend out of triumph and a mythology out of loss. But the pattern was never supernatural. It was human. The drive that creates greatness is the same drive that destroys peace. And when ambition is inherited, so is its shadow. The story of the Kennedys is not about politics or power or tragedy. It's about the illusion of control, the belief that destiny can be managed, when in truth, it only waits to be repeated. The name endures, the myth adapts, the lesson remains the same. We don't escape our history. We reenact it, generation after generation, until someone finally refuses the script. The Kennedy story didn't end. It evolved. New generations, new headlines, the same gravity. Every era rebuilds its own version of this family, powerful, admired, fragile beneath perfection. Because the formula never changed. Wealth builds access. Ambition demands legacy, and legacy demands another heir. The world keeps searching for its next dynasty. But the pattern was never about a name. It was about us, our obsession with beauty, control, and the illusion of destiny. In every story of power, there is an architect. And long after his work is finished, the structure keeps standing, even when the builder is gone. Joseph Patrick Kennedy once designed a dynasty. His blueprint survived him. The faces changed, the names shifted, but the plan, the belief in legacy as destiny, remained intact. That's the quiet genius and the quiet tragedy of control. You can shape history. You can even shape blood, but you can't shape what it becomes after you. The Kennedy name still echoes through the culture, in books, in documentaries, in whispered comparisons. Every era builds its own version of this family. New dynasties, new faces, the same hunger for immortality through achievement. Because the myth was never just about them, it was about us. Our fascination with beauty, ambition, and loss. Our belief that greatness must always come from a name. But bloodlines never sleep. They adapt. They evolve. They wait. And so the pattern continues. Generation after generation. Civilization after civilization. Each one convinced it's different. Until the mirror cracks again. File conclusion. Box. The Bloodlines of Power. Case 01. The Kennedys. If you want satire, go to my other channel, Punchline Protocol. You'll find the link in the description. If you want truth in the dark, stay here. Until then, Stay curious. The dark isn't empty. It's just waiting for someone to bring a light.